Thank you all for joining us today.
Great, thanks. Hello, audience in person and online audience. Thank you, Emily. My name is John Charles. I'm a career advisor in the Maine Career Center. And today I'm here to talk to you about not resumes, but cover letters. Cover letters. And the thing about cover letters is that they still are required. We still do them. But the world is changing. And in some cases, we don't have to write cover letters anymore. But for the most part, we still need to know how to write them, and we still have to submit them for most applications. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through, I promise it's a very simple PowerPoint, but sometimes I know people who are visual learners benefit from having that display. And the other thing we're going to do is, I realize, okay, so we've got the presentation here, so I don't. So what I want to do to start though is, I always try to do this for presentations, is to make sure that I'm able to answer the questions you have and why you are here. So I know for the people who are in the audience, would you raise your hand if you're here to learn how to write cover letters and improve cover letter writing? If there's anything else that you would like to get out of this session, please feel free. If you're online, just type it in. If you're in person, just tell me right now. Anything else that you want to focus on specifically with cover letters, or just generally about cover letters? Okay, sounds like generally for our audience here, and we'll monitor.
Yep, how to format a cover letter, someone wrote.
Okay, how to format a cover letter, got it. All right, that's a great question, and it's one actually I hadn't thought of in advance, so I'll make sure that I address that. Fantastic. Okay, so most job applications require a cover letter. I said that things are changing. For some jobs, you actually don't have to write a cover letter. In some applications, they ask you to answer questions, like short answers, as a replacement for a cover letter. But still, most positions will require that you write a letter. How long is it? Usually about 4 paragraphs. It fits on 1 page, so it's less than 1 page. And what it is an introduction to you as a candidate for this position that you're applying for. And your job is to answer the question, why are you applying for this position and what qualifications do you have? I guess that's 2 questions. Now, there are certain elements of a good cover letter. Of course, we could go into more detail, but I just wanted to present these. And for those of you who are online, those of you in person, I want to ask you if this seems to make sense, or if there's additional things you would add. So we want a cover letter to be concise. We want it to use relevant keywords found in the job description. And that's important because we want to draw the attention of the reader. We want to make sure that they think that we are qualified for this position. We want it to be easy to read on the page, meaning since people will read a cover letter on a screen more often than print them out these days, we want to make sure that it has a font that is relatively clear, easy to read. So Calibri, which is the default for Windows, or another in the category called sans serif, or I call it rounder without squigglies. That's the kind of font that we want. We want to make sure you respect the reader's time. Most people who are reading cover letters are doing so as on top of their regular job. They're busy, they're tired, and we want to make sure that we don't take up all their time. We want to engage the reader, make them interested in what we're writing. And we also, here, we must make a case for why I, as the candidate, should be considered for the position. All right. Anything additional? People online, people in person, anything else you think a cover letter should address?
Well, there's a question that kind of goes with respecting the reader's time. That you kind of mentioned that folks are looking at these quickly, and because people are skimming hundreds of cover letters, are paragraphs out and bullet points in?
Oh, thank you for that question. So are paragraphs out and bullet points in for a cover letter? My quick answer is I still believe paragraphs are the proper format for writing a cover letter. I'm not against limited usage of bullet points in a cover letter, but I would say for the most part, I prefer paragraphs, and I believe most employers prefer paragraphs. Thank you so much for that question. Okay, so I didn't tell you this earlier, but this is kind of like an experiential session. I always want, after finishing a session, I want participants to feel like you have something to take away, something to use afterward. So for those in the room, I ask that you, on your sheet of paper, maybe on the back of it, you can use it to start to write a cover letter. And if you're online, finding just a piece of paper to write on would be sufficient. So the first step in writing a cover letter is to identify the 4 skills and or experiences that are listed in the job description that seem most important for doing this role. So there might be 8, there might be 10. Look, we can't solve all the situation in one fell swoop. We have to limit the scope of our letter. And that's why I'm saying choose 4, the 4 that seem the most important. Now, for purposes of this exercise, you're probably wondering, well, John, okay, I don't know what you're talking about. What job are we talking about? Not to worry, there's one right now on the screen. And I've also provided a document, which might be, I don't know if it matters.
I'm gonna upload it.
Yeah, thanks. So, okay, so this is the position. I will tell you, it doesn't look like much on the screen. It actually comes from the Washington, D.C. Public, oh my gosh, how do you say it? The TV station, PBS, the PBS channel in the Washington, D.C. area, WETA. And the position is for a communications intern. And what I wanted to do is show you, first of all, the qualifications. Most job descriptions will have qualifications. What is required of the candidate, of the person doing the position? In this case, they want someone who has an understanding of the public media system and the opportunities for careers in the field. They want someone with excellent writing and editing skills. They also want someone who has high levels of organization and attention to detail and an ability to meet deadlines. Included in this description is a list of responsibilities. The responsibilities are going to be more detailed, of course, and they're going to give you sort of more of a context for what the position includes. Sometimes these responsibilities will be included in the cover letter. So it'll be a combination of the qualifications and the responsibilities with more of a focus on the qualification. Any questions about what I've just said, either in the room or online? Yeah.
Since it's only about, say, 3 qualifications here, is that when you would hold the responsibilities?
Great question. Because there's only 3, it seems like 3 qualifications, right? That's less than 4. Where are we going to get the other? It could be that you pull an additional one from the responsibilities. So, for example, one of the responsibilities is researching media contacts, writing pitches and releases, and making pitches to contacts. So maybe if you've had experience doing something like that, that would be something that you write about in the cover letter. Great question. Okay, so here's the next task. To begin the letter and to start writing a letter, I recommend in the first sentence to include 2 of the skills and experiences you identified. Now, to make it a little easier, let's go back. Okay, so 2 would be, right, the first 2 out of 4. I think that's right? Yeah, the math is accurate there. So I'm focusing on excellent writing and editing skills. And then also I'm looking at, I'm going to say levels of organization and attention to detail. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a kind of a head start on this letter. I'm going to give you an idea of what I might include if I'm writing a letter for this position, communications internship at WETA. So I'm going to say for the first sentence, as someone who has excellent writing and editing skills and is familiar with careers in public media, comma, I am writing to apply for the WETA communications internship. And we could also say like for spring 2024. Okay. So that's what I'm going to say. As someone who has strong writing and editing skills and is familiar with with careers, I am writing to apply for the spring 2024 WETA communications internship. That's my first sentence. Does that make sense? All right. So now, step 3, we're going to keep going. We're going to make a second sentence. And this is going to include the other 2 skills and experiences. Okay, so we already chose 2. I decided to choose writing and editing skills as 1, and knowledge of or awareness of the careers in the public media system as 2. Now, we could talk about organization and attention to detail, as well as an ability to meet the deadlines. That could be something included in our second sentence. But we do need something else, right? So we could talk about one of the responsibilities. For example, there's going to be some support of communications and marketing efforts. There's going to be support to develop communication plans. Anything else that you noticed?
Communication is the
Communication?
yeah, making the communications and executing them is one of the plan.
Yeah, okay. So like making and executing communication plans could be one. Great. So I say go ahead and choose that as one skill. And then maybe the other one is organization and attention to detail. Does that make sense? So we're breaking down the job description to these simple 4 little pieces that are going to be the basis for our letter. And the good news is, once we do that, the rest of the letter becomes relatively easy to write. In fact, it's almost writing itself, if you can believe it. It's not AI type of writing itself, but it's structurally writing itself. And then we'll go into detail about that to give you more explanation what that really means. All right, so that's where we are now. And at any time, step in and let me know if anything seems confusing or you're just not sure what we're doing here. All right, so we made the first sentence. Now, the second sentence would be something like, in addition, comma, I have a background developing communication plans and am highly organized and good at attention to detail. That could be one sentence. I'm actually going to change it a little bit. I want to change it a little bit. Let's do it this way. In addition, comma, my background developing communication plans, as well as my organization skills and attention to detail, comma, make me an excellent candidate for this role. Make me an excellent candidate for this role, period. So those are the first 2 sentences. Does anyone have an idea of how many sentences I'm going to suggest for the first paragraph? We're up to 2. How many do you think I'm going to have total? 3 or 4? Good answer. I'm going to actually finish it at 3. I like a short, simple first paragraph. So now we have 2 sentences. So the third sentence will demonstrate my motivation to work in this role and for this organization. This time, I'm not going to fill it in. I'm going to ask you to take a moment. So those in the room, those online, I want you to imagine what you're going to write for your third sentence to demonstrate your motivation for this role and for the organization. Okay, to remind you, the organization is WETA, Public Television. The position is communications intern. I'll give you a couple moments to think about that. And then I'm gonna come in, well, I'll ask if anyone has any suggestions or would like to volunteer to share what they've written. And then I'll share what I think would be a good sentence for sentence number 3. All right, any questions about that? Are you clear on what this next task is? Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay, when I have talked to someone about writing a cover before, they mentioned to include something from like the mission statement. Is this where I can include something like that about my motivation?
Yeah, great question. So the question was, previously, when writing a cover letter, the recommendation was to use something from the mission statement of the organization.
Yes.
And that would be an excellent thing to include in the sentence 3. It could be something like saying something about their mission and that you agree with their mission, and therefore you'd like to be part of this
Yes. Okay.
organization. Yeah, that could be something that you wrote in sentence number 3 to show your motivation. Yes, excellent. I'll give you a little bit more time to do this. I want to make sure that you actually, part of what I'm trying to do in this session is help you process the actual writing of a cover letter. I realize it's a little constricted timeline, but at least you'll get a sense of how to go about it.
Don, can you repeat the first sentence you created? Or so, as someone who has excellent writing and editing skills.
As someone who has excellent, I think I said I had excellent, right? I was that.
You did. You took it right from the job description.
Aggrandizing to say. And by the way, sometimes people are shy to say they're good at something. As long as it's accurate, as long as it's true, there's nothing wrong with saying you're good at something. Okay, so small little side note. As someone who has excellent writing and editing skills, comma, and is knowledgeable about careers in the public media system, comma, I am writing to apply for the spring 2024 WETA communications internship, period. That was the sentence, yeah. And then I'll try to remember the second sentence. In addition, comma, my background developing communication plans and as well as my organization skills and attention to detail, make me a strong candidate for this role. So the only thing I was tripping over was use of commas. Some people use more commas, some people use fewer, but if we use one, we usually use another one to set off that phrase. I'm not attempting to teach you English grammar, but we do need to pay attention to the use of commas in these sentences. Okay, so can I ask a volunteer to offer a third sentence for us in which you demonstrate your motivation to work in this role for this organization? Does anyone have an example? And if you don't want to read it, I'll read it for you if you prefer. This is the one where we touched on and we talked about the possibility of including the mission, the organization's mission in this sentence. Does anyone in person or online want to share? And if you're online, of course, we'll just ask you to type it in.
You could say something like based on your mission of, say, like serving underserved communities. Just as, I know it's a different role, but this is what I remember from my kind of school stuff. Like based on your mission of serving underserved communities, like basically this strongly aligns with my past motivations and future aspirations.
Great. Okay, thanks.
Something along those
So,
lines.
in this case, you brought in the mission, right? So, based on your mission of serving underserved populations, communities, and
Like my past work and my future intentions or aspirations, like they align, and this would be like a perfect.
great. So that's a nice way of wrapping up the paragraph. What is this? What is the purpose of this sentence? It's to kind of explain why are you applying for this position, right? And the answer is not, oh, because I really need an internship. Oh, because you pay $17 or $18 an hour. Oh, because it looks kind of nice. It's a specific reason why you're interested in the organization and the position. Great. Anyone else want to share? No pressure. If you have it, great. If not, here's another possibility. I have watched public television since I was a wee child and loved Sesame Street and the Electric Company. Gosh, those are some really old shows. But you could bring in something about your involvement with public television. You know, as long as it's authentic, right? That could be something you talk about as well. And would be thrilled to join the organization and would be thrilled to contribute to its mission of educating young minds, for example. Although they don't educate just young minds, but that's one thing they do. All right. Any other thoughts?
Like my goal strongly aligns with the with the work responsibilities over the WTA. So researching media contacts, I do that part of my academia. So I think I'm the best fit for this role.
Great. Okay. So my goals, you know, so like it could be academic and professional goals, or you could be specific, align with what
The
you,
line of work, something.
yeah. So you could say something like that. Okay. Yeah.
I guess you could say something along in today's increasingly polarized world, I want to contribute and support you said like non-affiliated, news organizations.
Nonpartisan.
Yeah, nonpartisan, but I don't want to necessarily like point to politics, but I feel like that unbiased, I guess you could say, because I know public radio, what this is, typically isn't that.
Yeah, or at the very least, it's trying to produce content that is positive, right? About learning and education, right? And not like yelling at other people, which is a good value. So your sentence was something like, in today's polarized world, I would be pleased to contribute to an organization that presents unbiased or whatever.
Yeah.
Programming. Sure, you could say something like that. I think that's nice. I think it's important, right? Like there's controversial issues. We don't have to avoid controversial issues. We probably want to be conciliatory as much as we can, but we can acknowledge, hey, things are going on in the world, and I want to do this as a counter. Yeah, right. Great, thanks. Thank you for your input. Anything from the online community? Okay, so there we go. So now we're already finished with paragraph 1. I explained earlier that the letter can almost write itself, and here's what I mean. So the second paragraph is basically building on what you said in sentence 1. If you remember in sentence 1, we talked about knowing about careers in the public media system and having excellent writing and editing skills. So what can we say in the second paragraph that builds on what we said? So writing and editing skills. Let's think for just a moment. How do you talk about writing and editing skills? Can you think of a way that you could prove it in a letter. You're not going to show them your portfolio, but
Talk about that you had a job at the Writing Center.
oh great, great. Just to repeat, to make sure people heard, you can talk about that you had a job at the Writing Center as a tutor. Excellent. Any other ways that you could demonstrate writing and editing skills?
If you're like a copy editor for like a magazine or a campus.
Great. Copy editor for a campus magazine.
That's what I had.
Okay, certainly. And for those of you who haven't done those interesting things, but only have had classes, you could talk about a paper that you researched and wrote for a class. That would be certainly plausible, or paper or papers. Now, the other part of that paragraph, of course, is going to include something about knowing about careers in the public media system. Now, how would you know about careers in the public media system? Maybe you had a parent who did that work, or maybe you studied it, maybe you followed it, maybe you wanted to do this and you read about it. There's different ways of having knowledge. And so we can be, what's the word, open-minded about how we show that knowledge. Okay. Any thoughts on this so far? I want to make sure that each step is understandable. So, how many sentences will we have in paragraph 3? Probably, oh, sorry, paragraph 2. Paragraph 2 builds on sentence 1. Anywhere from 3 to 5. So it depends a little bit. I tend to be someone who likes shorter. I just feel that it's important. So I would go closer to the 3 sentence side, but it's not a fixed rule. Now, the next step is to make the 3rd paragraph building on what you said in sentence 2. And to remember what we said in sentence 2, we will go back to think about the communication plans, right? Developing communication plans and the organizational skills, right? Attention to detail. Now, can anyone think of examples that could highlight those items? Let's start with organizational and skills and attention to detail. How do you demonstrate that? Are there ways that you can demonstrate that?
If we have any experience working in a clubs in the universities, we can say that as someone who had experience organizing some events in the club, so I find myself better organizing events in the work institute. Something.
Fantastic. Event planning, organizing events, managing events. In my mind, that's a really important skill because many jobs and internships require it. So clubs are a perfect way to do that. I know there was in SIS, they had international, over the years, they've had an annual international food night where it's a big event. Of course, there's a lot of food. That would be a perfect kind of event. All right. Any other ideas for organizational skills, attention to detail? Yes.
If you're working in a job, well, any job, because you sometimes, especially if you're doing a research assistant, you would have to kind of make sure you're going through all the tedious work.
Okay, great. So working in a job such as a research assistant, where you have to do tedious work, you have to pay attention to all the information, make sure it's correct. So I'll give you an example of my attention to detail recently. I was looking at my PowerPoint and I had like step 5 and then step 7. I skipped step 6, so I had to go back and edit. But what an easy mistake that could have been. But thanks to my attention to detail, you see step 6. Oh my gosh, what a relief that is. All right, great. So those are some examples. And again, everybody has those examples. Now, the other one, though, what was the other piece of that? Is kind of a little bit maybe atypical. It had to do with developing communication plans. This one might be a little more sophisticated, maybe a little bit harder to show. Would a student have done that?
You could say if you were on like the executive board of a club in like at school or something, and you need to
communicate between like the executive board and the general body of the club, or just like communication between other clubs?
Great. So another really nice example using a student club as someone who had to do some communication back and forth. Certainly, yeah, that's really nice. Anything else as far as communication plans? It's kind of a hard one. It's kind of obscure, actually.
Just day before yesterday, I communicated with Miss Emily regarding our event to post on a handshake. Yeah, like I'm a graduate representative for AUAC club, so we had a communication earlier that how to reach more audience.
Yeah.
So I'm as being a graduate representative, I had to complete all the departments in the university so that we can get wider audience.
Right, so that's really great. So communication plans can deal with things like marketing, outreach. How do you get a message out to campus? We struggle with that every day, every month. Is we want to give information to people, so we have to have plans for doing so. So that's a great example, right, with a student organization club. Excellent, thanks. Okay, so we're getting closer. We only have, so I recommend you use 4 paragraphs in a cover letter. There's no rule that you have to have 4 paragraphs. I like to keep things simple, though. In my view, if we can keep things just in a very structured, ordered way, later we can make variations if we like, but for now, we can just keep it simple. Let's not make it harder for us than it already is, right? It's already a struggle to try to get these things written and sent out. Let's just keep it simple for now. Now, so the 4th paragraph would be reiterating your qualifications and then basically just saying thank you for the reader. It can include a little bit more than that, but so by reiterating your qualifications, how might that look in a sentence? Let's say the opening sentence for the 4th paragraph. Does anyone have an idea for what that could look like or what that could be? Yeah.
In addition to the work I have done, or in addition, yeah, to the work, to my past experience, you know, like writing and editing, or even understanding the public media system, I look forward to contributing these skills and gaining a deeper understanding, I don't know, phrasing of that, but something along
Yeah.
those lines. Yeah.
Sure, and that's good. It's good. We got to,
Like
you know,
expanding.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
great, thanks. Yeah.
The-
And yeah, part of it is like we work through the language, which is why I think that's why I wanted to do this section sort of in this way of actually doing it, because that there we can address what are the challenges of writing it. So, but you touched on a couple of things like what you can contribute, then also what you would like to gain. Now, usually in a cover letter, I put emphasis on the what you can contribute, because that's what they're most interested in. The employer is most interested in what can you do. At the same time, it's important for you as a person who's applying for positions to feel that you're going to get something useful out of the job or internship. It's going to be valuable for you. And sometimes employers like to hear that. Sometimes, maybe after you've explained what you're going to contribute, you can say something about what you hope to get out of the experience, right? And certainly learning from a very well-known and well-esteemed organization, highly esteemed organization, might be something that you want to learn. Another way of doing this could be for the beginning sentence of the last paragraph, the 4th paragraph. Based on the qualifications I've outlined, comma, I believe that I can contribute important work to WETA's communications team. I look forward to discussing this position with you in more detail, period. Thank you for consideration. Thank you for your consideration. And then the sign off, sincerely, student at American, well, you know, your name. So this can be short, right? This fourth paragraph can be short. We do want to express some kind of gratitude, some kind of thanks, because I think that really matters, right? Show appreciation. Now, any questions about that fourth paragraph? It's pretty simple. We don't need to go into a lot of detail.
There is kind of a question that came up before as well when we were talking about maybe the end of the first paragraph, but is your cover letter a place where you can mention that you appreciate and share the company's values? And if so, where would you put that? Could you put that at the beginning or the end, or where would you put that?
Great question, thanks. So where in the cover letter would you say that you appreciate the company's values? I would say you could put it in one of two places. You could put it at the end of the first paragraph in that third sentence where we talked about motivation. So I appreciate the values, right? I appreciate the important work WETA does to educate the public, comma, and I would be thrilled. I would be excited to contribute to its mission, right? That could be one way you do it. In addition, or alternatively, in the last paragraph, you could say something about, you know, maybe in that first sentence of the fourth paragraph, where I said, you know, based on my relevant skills, I believe I could contribute to the important work being done by WETA, or I believe I would make a strong candidate for the internship role, period. Working at WETA would be a thrill for me, or working at WETA would be such an honor, and I look forward to this possibility, right? That could be another way that you say it at the end. Now, I know that, okay, so questions, I have questions. So we've finished the main task of this session. What does your letter look like? Does it seem solid? So I know all of you have been kind of writing your own version as we've been doing this. What do you think? Does it look good? Would you send it? Do you have problems? Do you have questions? Yes.
Do you have a heading like this on cover letter still, or no? With like your name, your.
Excellent question. You almost read my mind. You didn't read my mind. I don't think so, but you almost read my mind. So what is the format? And someone asked earlier about format of cover letter. I like a cover letter that has the same heading as a resume. You know, in the resume, you put usually we put our name centered in the middle of the top of the page, and then underneath our name, we have our contact information. I'm a fan of making the cover letter page look similar, just so that we can, what does it do? It helps us connect the resume to the cover letter, same person. Also, it saves space. Now, in the old days, when I was a college student, so sorry, I couldn't help saying that. You know, we use typewriters. I think you know what typewriters are. They're like the thing before the before the computers, right? And so the format on a typewriter letter is to put the address, right, of the person, of your address, and then the address of the person you're sending it to. The drawback of doing that in a cover letter is it takes a lot of space, and so it pushes everything down the page. So I like the use of the resume heading format to save space. That's my main thing. Yes.
Who do you address the cover letter to?
Oh, thank you. Boy, I didn't even think about that, but that's a really great question. So in the salutation, where you say, "Dear so-and-so," sometimes people aren't sure what to put. Many people will say, "To whom it may concern." I think there's a better way of addressing a cover letter, and that is usually we don't know the person's name. They try to hide it. They don't want one person to get all the emails. But we can assume that there's a plausible job title that we can use. Now, when I say plausible job title, there might not be anybody with a job title of hiring manager, but if we use that in a cover letter, it makes sense and they'll know who it goes to. So we can say, dear hiring manager, capital H, capital M, use a colon being the thing with the 2 dots at the end. Sometimes people will get confused and put a semicolon. It's like, no, you need a colon. Now, why a colon and not a comma? A colon is for more formal writing. So a comma is a little more relaxed. And this is a formal piece of writing, a cover letter is. So that's why we want a colon. All right. Any other thoughts on that? Any other questions about formatting or how it should look?
Actually, I was writing a cover letter last week, and I went to a career center. And as you said, you are using typewriter when you're a student, like employer's address and our address. I use that format. So
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I send that like that.
Yeah. And that's not wrong.
Yeah, it's
So, yeah.
a career center.
Yeah. So it's not wrong
Yeah.
to put the return address. It's just that sometimes it takes up a lot of
Yeah.
space.
Absolutely.
So would something like that be more appropriate?
Yeah, like if that's the way that you have your resume.
Yeah.
Again, we were just talking about a centered name, and then address at the top of the.
And John, I think you kind of just touched on this, but so should you add the company's address to the cover letter? Like, so if you have personal header at the top and then,
Yeah, you-
WETA,
Sure.
4,000 Mass Ave, blah, blah, blah.
Great, yeah, thanks for asking that question. That's, yes, it's good. You can certainly add the company's address. And that's, how should we say, it's a nice touch, I'd say. If you have the space to do it, and you should have the space.
So where do you put that?
So the company address would be on the left side. So,
Do you want me to bring up?
Before the
the-
dear hiring man.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so we'll show you on the screen what that might look like. It's basically gonna be on the left side of the page. Oh, that's us.
Let's see.
Um,
There's an example here.
yeah,
Let me
so we have an
share this
example.
to
So
Zoom.
I should say that the way that I'm talking about cover letters with you is slightly different from what other people will say. There's no one right way to do a cover letter. I'm presenting this method because I think it's quicker and easier and simpler just to create cover letters this way. But certainly you'll develop your own style. You might change things around based on what you think works for you. Yeah, so here's the example where we have the company name in the top left. I would recommend, I think it's better to use 1.0 line spacing. Again, to save space, but also I think it looks better when the words are closer to each other. All right. So that's a little bit on formatting, and thanks for all the questions, because these are the things that people wonder. Now, again,
There is, yeah, so double space, but you recommend single spacing on a cover letter, correct?
oh, right. So I recommend single spacing of your cover letter writing words, words on your page. Now, what are exceptions to that? Well, it's not a cover letter, but if you're working on a personal statement for law school, usually they say they want double spacing. Sometimes a fellowship personal statement or a graduate school personal statement can vary between double spacing and 1.0 spacing. Usually you just need to follow the instruction for those. But yes, single spacing for a cover letter. Now, okay, so I'm going to ask, so in a moment, I'm going to ask if we could get examples, if people in person or online would be willing to share their letters. Now, people who are online, I guess it might be a little challenging, but they could, maybe they could copy and paste into the chat. It wouldn't be impossible. But before we do that, I want to just touch on a couple of small items, and we're okay on time.
Yeah, we have about 15 minutes.
So there are some things that have changed in the pandemic era that might have implications for a cover letter. This also relates to a resume as well. But so if we acknowledge that the way that we go about our work, how we spend our time, who we communicate with, and sort of the lines between work and leisure time, because we're doing work at home now in many cases. So much has changed. Does that have any implications for what we write in the cover letter? And you might still wonder, well, why? Why would it? Well, possibly because we want to talk about things like new skills or new ways of doing things. So I think what's happened during the pandemic is we've had to share information in different formats. So maybe in the past we might have written a research paper. Now maybe we do things more creatively using video and music and sound. So I bring this up just to encourage you to think about ways that you've done things creatively that maybe you didn't do before, that you could include, of course, on a cover letter, in a resume. All right. So the second example, first one is created a multimedia video and art montage on the conflict in South Sudan. Converted an in-person internship into a remote role and completed final project using Zoom tools, or using video tools such as Slack and Zoom. Now, so again, some of this is kind of an overlap between resume and cover letter. But in terms of what you include in your cover letter, remember we're talking about examples, right? And so sometimes it's simply a course assignment, right? You might use a paper that you researched and wrote to talk about your writing skills and your editing skills. But I encourage you also to think about, like, when we write a cover letter, we're trying to get the attention of the reader. And sometimes the way to do that is to show that we are unique, that we've done things differently than maybe most people, that we've developed new skills and communication styles. So I encourage you to think in those ways when you consider writing a cover letter. All right, so if you need to reach me, my email is charles@american.edu. You can find me on LinkedIn, which is a really good way, I think, to further your career goals. We have on the Career Center YouTube page, we have webinars, and coming in the near future, we're going to have shorter videos on career-related topics that you might find useful. And one final plug. If any of you have language learning skills, there is an opportunity. I do believe, yes, you have to be a U.S. citizen. It's called the Critical Language Scholarship, CLS. It's for intensive language study in the summer of 2024. The deadline is coming up. The deadline to apply, I believe, is November 14th, November 14th. But it is a doable application, and you have enough time to do it. So if you have any questions about that, certainly you can contact me or my colleague Chris Swanson in the Office of Merit Awards. Thank you all for attending. If you have any final questions, please feel free to type them out now. For those in person, we will have a chance to wrap up. Oh my gosh! Before we actually close, I said that I was going to ask for people to offer their letters. Is there any volunteer who wouldn't mind reading their letter that they just created? Would you do? Could you?
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Okay, should I just start with dear internship coordinator or like
Yeah.
dear hiring manager?
However you want to. Yeah, internship coordinator is good one. Hiring manager is good, and just read it out loud if you would.
Okay, dear internship coordinator, as a 17-year Florida resident, I'm applying to be a intern in a Florida representative's office. I'm from Florida. So, as a 17-year Florida resident and as a second-year student at American University studying political science, I'm writing to you to apply for the summer internship in the office of U.S. Congressman Maxwell Frost. In addition, my background in writing and research skills, leadership, and organization skills make me an excellent candidate for this role. I am eager to gain real-world experience with the legislative process and am motivated by my own desire to create positive change and enhance the lives of others. I believe my academic background has equipped me with a solid understanding of political science and public policy, providing me with valuable insights to the legislative process and refining my writing skills. Furthermore, I'm currently a student in the School of Public Affairs and have experience writing public policy memos and briefs, as well as academic essays. Classes such as Public Power and American Public Policy, and Introduction to Comparative Politics have offered me experiences in analyzing and drafting policy memos, as well as implementing different writing styles and research techniques that I can utilize as an intern. During my time in college, I've actively engaged in various extracurricular activities that have honed my leadership, organization, and writing abilities. Through my position as engagement coordinator for the American University Body Neutrality Coalition, I've organized club events promoting body neutrality and facilitated important dialogues on diet culture and eating disorder education. As principal oboe for the American University Symphony Orchestra, I've led rehearsal by tuning the orchestra and collaborating with other musicians to perform major orchestral works. Additionally, I served as a copy editor for Ego magazine, proofreading and editing online articles on various topics related to fashion and culture. Based on the qualifications that I've outlined above, I believe I'm a strong candidate for this role. Please feel free to contact me with any questions or comments through the contact listed above. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Julian Malice.
Very nice. Thanks so much. Wow, you have a lot of qualifications. You're hired.
I hope so.
Fantastic. So I hope people saw how, that flowed very nicely. We had the different types of background, skills, abilities, and it all kind of wrapped together in a nice package, which is one of our goals. Thanks so much for sharing that. Anything else?
There's a question online that said, if I'm applying to a summer internship and I'm taking a class in the spring semester that provides skills that they want, is it helpful to add that in the cover letter that they're taking the class and will have and know that information by the time they take the job?
Got it. Very good. So the person is going to develop skills. The class just hasn't started yet, the spring class. I think as long as you're clear about the fact that you haven't done, right? You use wording such as, I will be taking a class on such and such in the spring. I think it's fine to include it. We just want to make sure that you're not presenting yourself as having already done something you haven't done. And certainly the person will have those skills by the time they do the internship. So I think it's a fair thing to include. But that's great. That's a great question. Thanks. Well, thank you everybody for participating. I appreciate all of your input, and good luck with cover letter writing. It's not so bad, once you just kind of like get it done. Wisdom from your career advisors. All right, everyone, take care. Have a good rest of the semester. Thank you. Bye-bye. And thank you,
Thanks,
Emily.
John.